Okay, Shalom Aleichem. Pashas Tzav Tafshin Pei Daled. So we begin. Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor. Tzav es Aharon ve'es Balaam Lemor. Zois Tuas ha'oila. It's the law of the oila offering. Hu ha'oila al moed al mizbeach kol laila the boiker ve'ish mizbeach tuka boy. We're setting up the oil offering. And this is the bit that I want to concentrate on. The lovash kohen midoy vad michnas vad. The kohen dresses himself in certain clothes. Yubash al basaroi. They're worn close to his skin. This is the point. He takes off his clothes and he puts on new clothes. So it's a famous thing that Arizal, the Arizal's Rav Hass calls him Rabbeinu Arizal. When he says Rabbeinu, he's always referring to Arizal. So Rabbeinu Arizal, he said that the madrigas that he came to, all his very high madrigas, was in the schus of Simcha Shel Mitzvah. The Baal Shem Tov is known for saying that all the madrigas that he came to was through the mitzvah of mikvah. And it's strange because when you learn Kisvei Ari, yeah, to be able to like pull out any kind of practical application is quite different. I mean, it depends on which svarim, but a lot of his svarim are so, well, not his svarim, that what the Reb Chaim Vital put down are so abstract and so disembodied from any kind of, yeah, if you're in a very holy state, you can see it in different places and whatever, but Lemaisa, it's all just completely dislocated from like any practical reality that we experience, at least apparently. Whereas the Baal Shem Tov was kulu about our reality and our world and what's going on here and bringing it down for us. So it always jarred in my head, why is it that the Arizal was saying the whole thing is Simcha Shel Mitzvah and the Baal Shem Tov is saying the whole thing is mikvah? I would have thought, just using my kind of truck driver, no offense to truck drivers, but my truck driver kind of mentality, yeah, it should really be the other way around. The Arizal should have been talking about mikvah, and for our generation, it should all be about simcha. You'd see, no?
I don't understand the question. I understand what each one stands for. I also don't know what it means. Mikvah. Mikvah got the Baal Shem Tov there. What does that even mean?
Meaning going to the mikvah. So you're right. I didn't really say that. Going to the mikvah is we know it's an important thing to do, yeah, but it's not as practically applicable as simcha. Having simcha in your life, having simcha, that's like something very tangible, very real. Mikvah, okay, you jump in the mikvah, that makes it, but it's very kind of like high. It's very like you would think that the final message coming from the Baal Shem Tov would be something more kind of concrete, more like be besimcha, as opposed to dunk in the mikvah. That's my. You might not agree with the question, but even if you do or don't, it doesn't matter. But what I'm going to explain either way, that's just my thoughts on the matter. Take it or leave it. So what we could really say is that the Baal Shem Tov was coming to explain how to be Mekayim the Arizal. How do we attain simcha? What's the key to simcha? And we need to understand what simcha is. So simcha, as we know, is the free-flowing emotion that the heart is able to express herself. She can just come out. She can be revealed as to who she is. That's simcha. Yeah, that's geula. The opposite is galus, which is not simcha, where that's timtum alev, where there isn't expression, there isn't free-flowing emotion. The heart isn't like a tube that just goes through and expresses herself as she needs. So now, what's the expression? How do we express ourselves? Expression is behavior. That's expression. And behavior is called levushin, clothing, garments, as we know. You have the inner garments, which is called thought. You have the Benoni garments like this, which would be called speech. And then you have the chetzoni, the outer garment, which would be called action. But either way, that's all behavior. Thought, speech, and action. And that's called garments because it's something external to you. There's another question as well where Alpi Halacha, as long as you're not wearing very tight fitting like undergarments, yeah, which men generally don't, there would be no milah of going in the mikveh completely unclothed than going in the mikveh with your undergarments on. Meaning it wouldn't be a chatzitza. It wouldn't be an interruption between the water and yourself. And even if it was, you could kind of just put your fingers just in the elastic and just poke that, but it wouldn't even be anyway. So it's interesting that we kind of we compromise the sneers. We compromise sneers in a mikveh, and we go in naked when Alpi halacha, you could l'chachila go in with some underpants on, with some swimming trunks or bathing suit on, something like that. So what's the idea? And how is mikveh a segula, so to speak, for simcha? And the answers in the Lashon of the Pasha. Poshet es begodov. He takes off his clothing. To be lahafshit, see, an animal doesn't wear clothing. An animal is its clothing. It's not that an animal doesn't wear clothing. All animals have clothing. Their clothing is just one with them. That's one of the ultimate differences between a human being, maybe the ultimate difference between a human being and an animal, is that an animal is its behavior. A human being behaves, but an animal is its behavior. I'll explain. You can train an animal, okay? You can train an animal to do certain tricks or whatever. But an animal can't take responsibility for training itself. An animal can't look at its behavior and analyze its behavior and determine this is good behavior, this is bad behavior, I should carry on with this, I should discontinue this, etc. An animal is its behavior. A human being, his clothing is removable by definition. So if he sees that he's acting in a certain way or talking in a certain way, or here's the Kiddush, even thinking in a certain way, he can actually take responsibility for that and decide that he's going to change his behavior. Whereas an animal can't. So it's not that an animal doesn't have clothing. The fur of the animal, the skin of the animal, in fact, what's the raya, is that we take the skin of an animal and we use it for our clothing. So it's not that an animal doesn't have clothing, it's that the animal and his clothing is one, which is completely opposite to the human being. The human being wears clothes. He is not his clothes. So lahafshit, the word pashat, to remove, it's the word to remove clothing, is also obviously the word to skin an animal, lahafshit oirus, to take off the ore of the animal. So the message is that going into the mikveh, don't forget how heilig it is, the taking off of the clothes. See, we think the taking off of the clothes is just so you can get naked and be in the mikveh. But the actual taking off of the clothes is a very, very important part of the process of going to mikveh. It's the disidentification with the behavior. The minute we can start seeing, and this is the real key, we don't even leave on our undergarments. Like to go in with the rechel and the shirt and whatever, yeah. Well, that's for sure. That's the Meiser and the Dibor. But what's absolutely vital is to disassociate from your thinking, to remove your thinking. Your thinking is the mamutza, like your undergarment, yeah, which touches your skin. That's what it says in the pasuk. That it touches the basa of the kohen. So in the analogy, in the moshel, the skin of the kohen is the actual neshama. The garment that touches the skin is machshava. Machshava is what causes. I mean, nowadays they have all the, what do they call it? The attraction principle. What's it called? The laws of attraction. They say what you think about will come to you. Yeah, the Baal Shem Tov told us this many years before. Yeah, that it's the machshavas. Not only, well, they don't only cause behavior, they even cause the reality of the world that you live in. You can look at the end of the second Parak Tanya if you want to get some grasp on that. The truth is, it won't help you much, but you'll see that that's what he's saying. But he doesn't give you much more information than that. But the actual thinking, our actual thinking processes, not only deeply affect our action and our speech, they actually affect our reality of the world around us. So the actual removal of the clothes, and especially the undergarments, is the ikka avoida of mikvah, where we're actually disassociating with our machshavas, and we're saying, I am not my machshavas, I have machshavas, but I am not my machshavas. Just like an animal who doesn't have abstract machshavas, an animal says, I am my behavior. The human being doesn't just say, I'm not my behavior, I am the one behaving, therefore I have shlita over my behavior. He says that I'm not even my machshavas. Machshavas come and they go. That's not who I am. So I had a friend of mine one time tell me, we've said this before, but it's very important, that he's a psychologist in Manchester, and he had a client, a girl who came to him, and she said, I'm suicidal. And he said, why? How'd you know that? She said, because when I'm walking like down the street, I'll be thinking about jumping in front of the ongoing traffic. So therefore I'm suicidal. And he mentioned that to me, like, so what do I say? And I was like, what does that mean she's suicidal? She's just a person who puts stuff together in her mind. Like you get the people who walk into your house, yeah, and they don't notice anything. In America, it's probably less, yeah, but you get that in Israel a lot, where certain people's minds work in the same way. They walk into your house and they're just looking at you and talking to you. You're what exists. The house is completely like it's not there. And then you'll get another guy who walks into the house and you'll see he's talking to you, but he's analyzing, he's processing, he's preferring, disliking, he's putting things together, he's comparing, contrasting. It's a certain kind of mind. So you've got a certain person who's walking down the street, he sees oncoming traffic, and a thought pops into his mind because it's just, he puts stuff together. Like, he's this kind of guy who's when you've got, you've got two people at the Shabbos table, he's thinking shidduch, where I'm just there thinking like, what tell me something about the Parsha. Yeah, it's a different kind of mind. So this person's walking down the street, they see the oncoming traffic, and they realize they're walking down the street. So they're like, well, what would happen if I jumped in front of that car? That's not suicidal. That's just the machshava zara that comes to your mind. Suicidal is when you become the machshava. It's not that you're having a thought about jumping in front of traffic. It's that you are the thinking, you are the thought of jumping in front of traffic. Now that's called suicidal. You hear the difference? And that's the avoider of mikvah. The avoider of mikvah, one of the avoiders of mikvah, but one of the big avoiders, there's other avoiders as well, but one of the biggest avoiders of mikvah is that disassociation, dafka with the machshavas. So you go to the mikvah, when you take off the clothes, there should be, especially as you take off the undergarments, there should be the thought of, I am not my machshavas. My machshavas happen to me, they come to me, but I am not them. And if I want to change my machshavas, I can do that. It's a little bit more involved than changing my actions, granted, but I can do that. I can read the right books, I can chant the right mantras, etc., like redemption song. But Ein Od Milvado, maybe. But we can chant the right mantras, we can write the right essays, we can have the right discussions with people, we can read the right books, we can change our thinking processes, and then we won't have those destructive machshavas zaras coming into our mind. Yeah, Yitzhak.
Okay, so makes sense. So then can you just fill in the blank? So we're not our machshavas, we are what? What are we then?
So in this context, if you want to fill in that blank, we can say we're the space in which the machshava happens. Now we can look at that machshava and say, that's a good machshava, I'll keep that one. That's not a particularly good machshava, gone. That's a terrible machshava, quick. Get rid of that. That's the power it gives to us. And that's the inyan of Ibud Oirus with the mikveh. Anyone knows what Ibud Oirus is? Ibud Oirus is the process of suppling up the hide of the animal to it's called sid. They call that lime scale. I don't know what that means. Sid it's a very kind of acidic like liquid that you soak the hide of the animal, and it supples it up, and eventually the hide of the animal becomes the parchment upon which you can write a Sefer Torah. Think about that, man. The imagine what a piece of ore from a behemoth just stripped off of the behemoth looks like. One side is hairy and disgusting, and the inner side is blood and flesh. It's the most, it stinks. The whole thing, it must be the most repulsive. It literally, think about it, a piece of hide ripped off of a behemoth gasa, of a cow. It must be literally the most repulsive thing I can think of, literally. And that becomes the cloth for the Sefer Torah. Dafka, that revolting, disgusting, most physical chomer you could think of, is the only thing that's kosher to write on the Sefer, to write a Sefer Torah on. And that's the meaning of Ibud Oirus. Ibud Oirus is the soaking of the skin. The soaking of that thick, disgusting, horrible skin that supples it up to make it shayach to the oisius of the Torah. And that's the inyan of mikvah. Mikvah's like dunking that skin, that thick, heavy, disgusting thing that as you wake up in the morning, that horrible thing that you are, yeah, throwing yourself into the water and suppling it up so that you can actually write the oisius of the Sefer Torah can be written on that. And that's what you become. A yid is a Sefer Torah. You're mamash, a walking Sefer Torah. That's what you are. That's what we are. We are mamash. We are walking. You know, the halacha of a Sefer Torah is, you know, the halacha of standing up for Sefer Torah. The halacha is not when you open up the Aron HaKodesh. And when a guy's sitting there in shul after Hagbah, he's sitting there with the Sefer Torah, you don't have to stand up as well. You know when you have to stand up for a Sefer Torah? Is when it's being picked up, when it's being held up by a yid, especially when it's moving. That's what we are. We're the walking Sifrei Torah. It's the oasis of the Torah and the Yiddish koyach I wonder, it's interesting if a goy was holding, if you'd have I don't know the halacha, if a goy was holding a Sefer Torah, or a Sefer Torah has been driven past you in a car, if you'd have to stand up, I don't know. But assuming what we're saying, maybe you wouldn't, but I don't know that. But it's the infusion of the koyach of the yid and the actual choma of the Sefer Torah that is where the godliness is, and that's where you have to stand up. And so that's the key to simcha. The key to simcha is realizing that you are not your thought, you're not your speech, you're not your action. So the Baal Shem Tov came to explain the Arizal, which is Kashitasoi. That's what he does throughout everything. He's coming to explain the Rebbeinu Arizal. So his whole thing about mikvah is not that simcha's the ikka. Simcha's for sure the ikka. But 300 years later, 200 years after the Arizal, we had become more distanced from it. So the Arizal, Kashitasa, is coming to teach us how to be, that Baal Shem Tov, Kashitasa, is coming to teach us how to be Mekayim the Arizal. How do we get connected to Simcha Shel Mitzvah? Is by becoming disconnected, not in a negative way, but creating that distance between us and our clothing, becoming human, realizing that you are not your thoughts, you're not your speech, you're not your action, like an animal. You are the one who wears his thoughts, wears his speech, wears his action, which means it's up to you to take them off and put them on at will. And that's why it's called Levushim. So really the answer is that that the Baal Shem Tov is coming to explain the Arizal and to realize that the Ikka Simcha that we have now, the key to Simcha is by realizing that especially we're not our thinking, and that these negative thoughts that we have are just negative thoughts that we have. They're not anything to do with us. They're not of me. They're not me. They're coming from me or of me or even from other places external to me. But that is the most empowering thought. That's the most empowering thing that you can know. And that's mamash a segula for simcha b'ezrat Hashem. Okay, we should be zoicha to mamash big simcha, and that should always what's the word? The simcha, it's not an end unto itself. Just remember that simcha is not an end unto itself. Simcha is so that we can be oved Hashem properly. And we should be mamash b'simcha, mamash bouncing out of our heads so that we can dedicate ourselves to the Rebbeinu Shalom in the way that every yid needs to dedicate himself to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Like I said, we're mamash walking Sifrei Torah. Remember that. Imagine that. A walking Sefer Torah is not going to pick his nose. Think that.
Amen.
B'ezrat Hashem, you should be zeicha. Okay. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Shabbos.